Welcome, Judith. I'm so excited to have you here today.
I'm
So,
so
audience, I
excited
know this
too.
is a little bit I know this is a little bit of a swerve for us because I've been talking the last several episodes about like how to deal with these mass layoffs that have been happening in technology, maybe how to be able to get yourself back out there, all these kind of things. And now we get to get into a topic that is going to make you feel so great because we're going to talk about some things, some strategies, and also some topics about you stepping into a version of yourself or just embracing the possibility of another version of yourself, clothing and style and the way that you feel wise. Now, my guest is amazing, and I got the opportunity to meet her. I've seen her speak on stage to thousands of people at a time twice now. We bonded over the fact at this last event that we were at where I was on a guest panel, but you were like on a main stage, one of the presentations, and you killed it. And I was like, there is no way, from my background in the entertainment industry, there's no way that this amazing woman does not have theater experience. Because you held the audience so well, you present so well, you know when to have a silence, you know when to amp it up, all those good things. And we had a chance to talk off stage, and I was like, theater kid? And you were like, theater kid. Because we spotted each other and the vibe and the energy. And I just love the stories and the way that you have brought about specifically your business and how you're helping people in the world right now. Now, the rest of you, today we're going to talk a little bit about your style story, maybe what it is right now, maybe what you'd like it to be, how you're showing up for yourself at work, off of work, how clothes can inform the way that you feel. And before I get into any more of this, I would like to actually turn it over to Judith to introduce herself. Tell them about what you do, because I just think it's so amazing, the specific thing that you have built this amazing business around.
Yeah. So, hi everyone. I'm Judith Gaton. I'm a master certified coach and personal stylist. And formerly, I was an attorney. I was a longtime litigator. So, I had lots of little shows along the way. Originally a theater geek, a huge Star Trek, like big Trekkie nerd, and
Yes.
part of my love for Aaron, like not only did like the theater kids and each other recognize each other, but my dear friend has some sartorial swagger that is so on point, and we bonded over that, especially brooches and having that little bit of swagger game. So I'm so
Yes.
glad to be on the podcast today and to dive into what I do specifically. So I'm the creator of a program called Modern Charm School, and I like to envision that it's this beautiful Art Deco building, and on the first floor, when the high achieving, amazing women come in, we get them dressed for the world outside their closet. And we teach them tools that can apply obviously in getting dressed and getting ready and taking care of yourself. But then those tools also apply to the next levels of this building, right? So we talk about wealth generation, leading with gumption, and leaving a legacy. Those are the 4 stories of Modern Charm School. And the
Love
cool
it.
part is I literally get to help women up level how they dress. But once you start seeing yourself in a different way, you can't help but extend that to all the other areas of your life. So then your wealth and your money concept gets a makeover. And then how you lead in rooms and show up with confidence, that gets a makeover. And it's kind of this tumbling, amazing rolling effect that ripples out to all the areas of your life. So I think I've answered your question.
You think you've answered my question. That was amazing. You're such a great storyteller. I love that image too of the Art Deco building with the different floors, that all of these things that people might at first blush not think about relate to their personal style. And style can refer to clothing, but other things as well. Like you said, investments, um, planning for your future, planning your time. Like all of these things have an element of style to them when we're at work, when we're with our friends, when we're at play, when we're with ourselves. And I love how you bring all of that together. If you have a chance, everyone right now that listens to the podcast regularly, we always do a version of this that's posted to the website and on the YouTube channel where you can see us on camera right now. And you have got to experience Judith's hat game. Her hat game is so strong, everybody. She has an entire collection of amazing hats, fascinators, all kinds of things. I would say it's like a signature piece for you at this point. You know what I mean?
It's become
Like,
the hats have their own, like, stories around them, and people are
yes.
like, "Well, where did you buy this one?" Or I was waiting on a hat to come from London at one of the events I spoke at, and I didn't even think about the hat would take on a life of its own. I was like, I don't know if it's gonna arrive in time, and I was showing people pictures of the hat. So when I arrived, everybody was, like, almost pushing me out of the way, like, "Where's the hat?" Like, "Is she here? Did she arrive?" I'm like, "Well, hi. I'm here just in case anybody cares, and she arrived safely, and no worries." So they can take on a life of their own almost. It's kind of fun.
They're their own side celebrities.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly.
Yeah. And I today dressed up as well. I was like, I got to bring my A game if Judith's going to be on the call. So I've got the vest on. I've got a pink contrasting shirt. Got a felt boutonniere going on.
It's
The
fabulous.
tattoos are out with a little bit of jewelry. So just kind of stepping into what I've heard her encourage people to do, which is like, who do you want to be? It's okay if that's different than who you were in the past and what your industry maybe that you're in even expects of you in huge
Yeah.
quotation marks. Like, how can you make that your own? And there's so many different ways that we could go with this. And I can say from my experience, just as in one of my past lives as a casting director, when an actor would get a role, and if I was ever on set, the difference between an actor coming into the audition room and doing a great reading, but they're in their street clothes, their regular clothes, and then they would go to the fitting that might be prior to the shoot or whatever. But once they go into that fitting and they look in the mirror, they start to create that character. It really does help inform the way they move, the pacing of their speech, their confidence, the way that they talk, all of these different things. And that if there's a version of people that are listening to this right now where they maybe don't, maybe from pandemic leftovers, maybe even from before that, there was a way they felt that they were expected to dress even. And maybe there's a version of themselves that they would like to express through clothing or through other definitions of style, as you pointed out, which can mean more things than just the clothes you put on your body. I just think that there's really something there for us to discover right now because of the way it makes us feel.
Yes.
And it's great professionally as well. Obviously, that has an effect on the way people treat you when you show up in a room. We're humans. We're all humans. And sometimes we make snap judgments. And a lot of times clothing is a large indicator of that. They don't already know who you are. So all of these little things do tie together. And I would love to hear from you as well. I think because this isn't as you mentioned before, this isn't the first incarnation of a professional life that you've had. Like, you were a lawyer, still are, right?
Yeah, I technically still have my license. I maintain my license. I never want to take the bar exam ever again so long as I live. I only did it once. I passed on the first try and I was like, okay, I will pay the fee for forever because I will never want to take this again. But I was a litigator. I was a litigator for 11 years. I was in the courtroom all the time.
Mm.
And like a lot of professions, there are rules of how you're supposed to dress. There are literal rules of court in terms of conduct and attire, sometimes depending on what jurisdiction you're in. And there are expectations, right? Like every profession. And it's so interesting because even in those rules, everyone, I just want to offer you all this. Even if there's an expectation of, we all wear hoodies and all birds. Okay, great. There's still
How do you
such
know the tech sector so well, Judah?
not my first rodeo with you peeps, right? But even if that's the case, then like there's so much room to play. Like we can find you the most sumptuous, luxurious cashmere hoodie that we can possibly find. And it does not have to be all birds. I have thoughts about them, right? Like there can be all kinds of other sneakers available to us that are equally amazing, if not more so. Like there's so room to play with how you choose to show up in the world. And I think that's the cool thing about how I think of style. And I want to offer you all this definition is that style is just your thoughts and your feelings about yourself outwardly reflected.
Oh, I love that. Please say that one more time.
Yes, I will. Totally. So style is your thoughts and your feelings about yourself outwardly reflected. And that's
Yes.
separate and apart from fashion. So fashion is fads, trends, it's happening in the external world. We get to watch it like a giant circus parade. It's so much fun.
Hmm.
But style is like you and yourself having a cozy chat in a cafe, and you just get to express how you think and feel about yourself outwardly, which could be for good or for not, depending on
Mm.
your current thoughts and feelings about yourself and how you feel about how you've been showing up in the world.
That's so good. The way that it makes us feel and the way that we're showing up. Yeah. And I feel like going back a little bit to that pandemic type thing, like I found myself coming out of that and going like, well, I've upgraded my sweats. That's good, right? Like, these aren't Champion anymore. I have Yuri.
Hey, they have upped their
That's good,
game
right?
in terms of, like, their joggers feel beautiful, they feel yummy. I get it, I totally do.
Totally get it. And I'm a gym guy, so I'm like, okay, I feel stylish while I'm at the gym, but maybe when I'm professionally showing up to some of my coaching and stuff like that, maybe there's something else that I want to feel and who I want to be. And what counts as well is like, you know, what we can't see below the camera, what in the industry we call the sportscaster, which is, do they have pants on? A lot of times they don't underneath that desk. So, but maybe the way the audience might not see it, but it informs the way that you feel. Are you showing up kind of as I was thinking about this the other day. Am I not, the way I show up right now as my present version of myself does inform what I'm moving towards for the future version of myself.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
am I pulling myself towards something that I want and the person that I want to evolve into? Or am I just kind of creating stagnant energy?
I walk my clients through this exercise, and I think this will be so helpful for all of you who are kind of like, "How do I make this practical? How do I drive this home in terms of
Mm.
why are we even having this discussion, Aaron and Judith?" And here's why, loves. I walk my clients through this exercise. Imagine you won an industry award or an accolade, or you're getting recognized by your peers and something that's super important to you. So whether you've come out with a new piece of software, a new app, a new piece of tech, or you're at some industry event and you're getting acknowledged by your peers for the work you do in the world.
Mm-hmm.
When you imagine yourself there, no one ever imagines themselves in a Zoom mullet where they're like, business on
Totally.
top, party on the bottom. No one ever imagines themselves like pantsless running around with like a suit and tie on top. Like, no one imagines themselves like they're fully dressed, they have shoes on, they smell okay, if not good, right? Like, the little details are there. And the reason why it's so important that we start to show up that way now, and I'm not gonna take your stretchy pants away from you. Like, wear your gorgeous, amazing
Thank
stretchy
you.
pants if
Thank
you'd
you. Thank you.
like. You get to keep them. But I want you to start to show up a little bit more as your future self every day and start to recognize that person as already here and existing so
Mm.
you can normalize the experience when it happens. So many high achievers work years, and some of you are developing stuff that's going to take years to come to fruition. When it does, there's such a disconnect. You almost feel like an imposter. You're wearing someone else's shoes. You have to borrow somebody else's suit to go to
Mm.
the event, and it makes it feel even weirder. Maybe you're an introvert and it's awful. Like, ugh, right? But that's because we haven't practiced being that person. As opposed to if we practice being that person, we recognize when they show up because they're here more often than you think, love. It's so normalized that that part of you that gets afraid or worried about what other people think, like we can deactivate that a little bit. We can simmer that down. So it's just normal. And then the normal, human tendency to self-sabotage or self-deprecate, we can kind of mitigate that by showing up more often as a future self we want to become.
Oh, love that. See, there's so many. What I love about you as well is that you always show me where this intersectionality of style and the way I feel about myself and the way what I'm projecting and where I want to go. Like all of these things are tied together. And the outward expression, much like in the Devil Wears Prada, is like it actually is. It is something that is influencing. It's like art that you wear. You can think of it that way. Not everyone's going to feel that way about their clothes, but for some of us, like that really energizes me personally. Like I love the way I feel when I've decided, especially on days where I don't need to, on
Yes.
days where I'm not coaching a class of, 50 people at Microsoft and I'm on camera all day, like where I'm just planning for the next thing I'm developing, or I'm planning for an upcoming podcast or something, and I'm not on camera. The way that I'm presenting for myself, I find almost more important on those days. But I didn't always feel that way, or always didn't realize that that was having an effect on me.
Yeah. And I think because
Yeah.
probably the people you serve, they're like, have this adage, which I hear very often from my work from home peeps. It's like, well, nobody else sees me. And it's like, but you see you. Or at least I hope
Arguably the
you're
most important person.
right. The most
Yeah.
important person in this equation, like you see you at 2:00 on a Tuesday when you're washing your hands in the bathroom and you look up at yourself. Is it like dismay? Are you shocked? Do you even recognize the person staring back at you? And for a lot of my clients, they're so heads down that I tease them. I'm like, "You're not an actual, like, floating brain without a body. Like, you actually have a body, and the only way your brain
Mhm.
functions at the high level that you need to function at is for you to connect that body and brain." So we want us to pay a little more attention because your opinion matters the most. But I think sometimes that can be a hard sell if you've been ignoring yourself for a really long time.
Yeah, and it really is. It's like, oh, this is an area of self-care that a lot of us, especially us dudes, I'm talking to you right now, can let slide hard because the society that we have, especially in Western culture, is much more forgiving to us when we show up not dressed for our A game in corporate situations.
Yeah.
So I kind of think, yeah, there's some work for us to do there, but not because you need to feel bad about yourself, but because this is a way for you to actually practice self-care and watch your own reactions to yourself. As Judith was just saying, when you're washing your hands and you look up in the mirror, that you're like, hey, good job. You're looking good. It helps you feel better, helps you show up for yourself on days when you are on camera or not having the Zoom mullet, and days when you are. I'm using that term forever now, Zoom mullet. I hadn't heard that one yet.
I did not coin that phrase. I can't remember who did.
It's
So
so
we'll
good.
we'll credit some other human for that, but it just, like, immediately brings to mind that image that we're thinking of. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Now, you mentioned something right when we were getting ready to talk today, and you were something that my mind is still chewing on in the background right now. And you were talking about how we are specifically in a time in history where we have clothes specificity that we might not. It's different than in times in the past. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Because I was that made me super curious.
Yeah, I realized this mostly during the pandemic, and now that we're coming out of it, I feel it even more acutely again having these conversations with my clients. For most of human history, you have very, very wealthy people were the only ones who had a change of clothes,
Mm,
right? You had a garment that you wore and maybe a cloak, and then maybe if you were, more wealthy, there would be a change of clothes. You'd have, like, wedding garments. But for the most of human history, we had the clothes of what we were wearing. And as we've modernized, modern humans have this weird thing where our clothes will dictate our activities. So we'll
mhm,
prime ourselves to engage in an activity by a change of clothing. We have our bed clothing, right? So disrobing signals to our brain, oh, we're winding down for the night. It's part of the circadian rhythm, right? When I wake up in the morning and I do my morning ablutions, I change my clothes again. Now my brain is signaled for prime for work, right? If I going to some devotional thing on Sunday and I change my garments again, now I'm like, oh, I'm in a reverential, solemn space. Like, we're very strange. I go to the gym, I wear my gym clothing. If I'm going to pick up my kids from school, it's a different outfit change. Like, modern humans are crazy pants with the outfit changes. Like, nowhere else in
it's like we're
human.
at the Oscars and we're going to all the after parties and having a wardrobe change each time.
Right, exactly. And people are like, I'm not that high maintenance. I'm like, you might be more than you think, lovey, right?
We are. I wouldn't have thought of it that way, but on default, we have so many more changes during the day than in past history.
Than in
It's
past
crazy to think
history.
about.
Right during the pandemic, we stopped changing our clothes. So our
Mm,
brain literally lost, like, first of all, our circadian rhythms got all messed up. We got all this blue light coming at us, which is its own problems. And then we weren't
yep.
changing our clothes. So our brains literally were like, "Wait, are we going to the gym?" Because I'm like, in my gym clothes. No, we're not going to the gym. We're just okay. We're at home. Okay, like the wires are really confused now. Like all those neural pathways we created are gone to hell. Thanks so much. Or like, am I sleeping now? Oh no, she's going to the computer, but we haven't changed yet. Oh, we're just staying in these. Cool. We're staying in these all day, and then we're gonna sleep in them and wake up in them, and then we're gonna. Okay, I don't know what day it is. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where, like, it's
Ah,
so confusing for those neural pathways that we were relying on, like that rote automated activity. So now we're coming out of it and we're asking our brains to like heal from the trauma of it, go out and see humans again. And not that it's gone, not that any of those concerns are gone. For a lot of us, we're still dealing with aftermath of it.
yes.
And it's kind of a hard sell to your brain, like, "And we want you to get dressed up again and change 5 times a day like you were doing." Like,
Yeah.
that's a lot, I think, to ask.
Yeah. It's so true. I mentioned to you before my and I feel like I hadn't really heard the term, at least not used nearly as much, of athleisure wear or like upscale athleisure wear. It became such a trend during, especially 6 months in, a year into the pandemic. It's like all of a sudden there was, even stylistically, when you would see runway stuff and things like that, there was an element of all of a sudden upscale sweatpants.
Yeah, and very
It's like they were
expensive
signaling
Jammies
to us,
cotton.
like,
Yeah.
we got you if this is really what you want to buy.
Like, and a lot of retailers weren't prepared for it, right? So now we're coming out of it, and a lot of people have a desire, but they're out of practice. We just got to practice
Mm,
again.
I love that. And I love specifically when you're working with clients, how does that work? So they start working with you and you kind of have a way for them to work through where they are now and things that feel good to them now. Do you have a process that you like to start with so that they can start to get, especially, I'm going to bring it back to the dudes again. For the dudes that would tell you, and I'm sure there's a lot of them listening right now that would be like, I have no idea what my style is. Like, I've never really thought about it that much. Like, where do you have someone that maybe at least feels a bit clueless as far as where to start, how to get started?
Well, and I coach a lot of really smart, I call them smart cookies, like really. So they didn't care about the style stuff. They were like, I'm going to get my degree. I'm going to start my business, focus on my
Yes.
career. So a lot
Yes.
of the humans I serve come to me and they're like, I don't even what style. I never had it. And I'm like, oh,
That
you
makes me feel
probably
better. Okay.
yeah, you definitely have a style. So I start everyone in the same place. We have a process we call edit, design, and create. The edit part is so important. I think we all think of like the movie montage and Pretty Woman, Julia Roberts with like the cavalcade of bus boys going behind her, bellboys,
Oh yeah.
with all the. That's not how real makeovers work in real life. You actually have to clean
What?
out. Yeah, I
Judith,
run.
you're killing me.
I wish. I want a Pretty Woman experience. Mine is the whole apart. But like all of us, right? We think like she's all that. You take off your glasses and you shake your head, and then right, and then magically you're
the
made
the
over.
classic, oh, we didn't know how beautiful you were until you took off your glasses and shook out your hair, Hollywood trope. Yeah,
Oh
that's
my
always a
god.
good
There's
one.
okay, so there's a great scene in The Big Sleep with Humphrey Bogart, and he goes into the bookshop, and it's like a integral part of the story. If you have not seen this, I highly recommend watch this very confusing movie. The plot is bizarro, but the acting is really great. And the shop girl takes off. He asks her, do you need to wear those? Because he's like trying to flirt with her. And she's like, no. And she takes them off and lets her hair down and turns around. And he goes, well, hello, you clean up nice. And it's just like this funny moment. I'm like, really? You could not tell she was this gorgeous woman behind her hair was pinned up and she had glasses on. So anyway, I
That's funny.
digress. I'll go back. I'm sorry.
The digressions are the best part of our conversation, so never apologize for the digressions.
I couldn't help. There's a old Hollywood moment we could segue into, but we think that sort of thing. So it's important to actually start with what's not working and to get really, really clear about what's not working. So typically for my men, when I coach them, your underwears probably have holes in them. Your socks probably have holes in them. I love y'all. Y'all are hilarious. Um, I had a client, he would like scratch his armpit in the same place. It was like just like a nervous habit. So
Uh-huh.
all his t-shirts, his undershirts had holes in the same spot. But it was such an odd space. And then I saw him do it. I was like, that's why it's happening.
That's how that happens.
That's why you have that weird hole in that weird spot. So, we really want to clean out what I call janky stuff. Anything that's holes or is worn or stained. I mean, just like I would say for, people who identify as female and, changing your panties and your bras, for people who
Mhm.
identify as male, or just humans who wear boxer briefs or t-shirts, I want to make sure that it's really good quality. We want to make sure it fits you well. Like, the foundations matter. And partly because no one sees it at first, right? So just like
Yeah, right?
you would do your plumbing in your house before you hang up new curtains, hopefully.
Uh-huh.
Like, we want to do the same because it helps you build that relationship with yourself. This really isn't about anybody else seeing you. This is really how you're feeling as you go about your work in the world. So we have to, whatever's not working, we got to get rid of.
This is 100% on absolutely part of a conversation that I had recently with another male friend, where we talked about like what was the version of like just feeling a small thing that you can do that feels like $1,000,000 all of a sudden and upgrades your daily game. And it was the combination of some sort of haircut, for those of us that have hair, some sort of haircut, new socks and new underwear. Like, once all three of those things happen, especially if it happens in the same day, you're just like, yeah. That's a dude spa day.
I love that. Right, your yeah right now was so good. Yeah, the little hand motion he made, it was everything. But you're right, like, it is. And if the world, if all the planets happen to collide and you can get it done in a line at the same time, how amazing is that? But it can create a major shift just in like and it's so funny because humans wear shit that's like so uncomfortable. And then they're like, "Oh, I had a really stressful day." And literally in the back of your brain is like this buzzing sensation because you're picking out wedgies, something was too tight on your belly, you were itching your armpit incessantly, whatever it was all day. And it's like, well, no wonder you've had a bad day. Literally running in the background of your mind is all this physical discomfort. If we could just get you a
Mm,
modicum of relief, think of all the brain space we've now just freed up for you. Like it's
yeah.
so good. So always starting with like what's not working for me and getting rid of it. And then when we get to the second part, the design phase, is like, how am I already showing up in the world in a way that works for me? And then designing my wardrobe around my life. I think
Mm.
sometimes we try to do this in reverse and it doesn't work. We think, oh, if I wear certain if I wear certain things, the clothing magically will create the life I want. And that's not how it works, love.
I've definitely done that.
Yeah.
I've definitely done that.
It's piles of fabric creatively stitched together that we call a t-shirt. It has no magical qualities. You are the magic bringer in that equation, my friend. Just gotta remind folks sometimes.
Yep.
Yeah. So chances are you actually have some sort of combination of things you wear that already work for you. We just have to up level it. Once we remove the janky, then we can see room for maybe we find a better fitted t-shirt. I think for men in particular, that you drown in your t-shirts. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, even if you're living on the fluffier side of life, there are T-shirts for
Mhm.
you, my friends. Like, I really,
Yes.
really mean that. One of my favorite things to follow on Instagram is brawny models. It's a hashtag, not just 'cause
Ooh,
there's
I'll
some
check that out.
sexy ass men, but they're, like, men who have what we consider non-traditional model bodies. So, like,
Mhm.
they have extra fat on their body and they're very, very good looking. And you just to get an example, just like I tell any, female identifying client to change up their visual diet, some of you need to change up your visual diet in
Your
terms of
visual
who you're
diet. I
following
love that.
online. Maybe
Mhm.
a dude's on the smaller statured side. You need to follow dudes who are handsome and sleek and got mad swagger, or maybe more your height. It doesn't have to be everyone who's 6'5" and taller, and that doesn't even make sense, right? If you're
Yep.
on the skinnier side, maybe follow some dudes who are on the thinner side, but like have mad swagger. They're out there, but we have to retrain our brains to see in ourselves what's beautiful, what's good, what's like worth playing up and playing with. And changing your visual diet's really going to help you start to create what you think is your own personal style. Like we said,
Mm.
chances are if you're wearing hoodies and you're rocking like jeans, let's just get you jeans that actually fit you that are not 5 sizes too big. I don't know why men do this.
Uh-huh.
Like your suit probably could be taken in 3 sizes for most men.
It's totally true. A lot of us do that. A lot of us, I don't know, yeah, where that comes from. But I've definitely had that advice. I mean, my relationship with my tailor, like that isn't actually an adage, I think, like from back in the day, like the important relationships for a man, with his partner, with his wife, and with his tailor.
Yes.
Like it can be a lifelong romance because they know your body and they know how to make you look great in the clothes that you've purchased. Even if it's off the rack, they can make them look so much better.
Yeah, and they're not it's so interesting because we have a module called Think Like a Tailor, where I
Mm,
have my clients painstakingly take their measurements, and some of them are weird, and we've just included them for the sake of, like, it's just a body, these are just numbers, you're okay,
mhm.
and sometimes men get caught up in, "Well, my waist is a blah, blah, blah," or "My suit size is a blah, blah, blah," just like all the humans, we get stuck on weird numbers, but if we were to think like a tailor, and we were to, like, put on tailor glasses, they're just numbers, and
Yeah.
our whole goal is to conform the clothing to your body and not the other way around. So we don't have to lose weight or do anything crazy. We just get to make the clothing conform to you. And when we
Such a
think
good
like a
point.
tailor, it's just very different.
Such a good point because really when you think about it, those numbers were just invented so that you had a frame of reference to start with. Like I'm around this number size that hopefully is standardized in some way across pants or whatever. And I don't need to hold on to that number with my ego that like in college I was a 32, so I need to be a 32 all the time or I'm failing. And I will make myself uncomfortable to fit into these jeans, or vice versa. I will size up 2 sizes and they don't look that great on me, but it's almost like you're hiding. a little bit. It's
Yeah.
interesting.
I see it
Yeah.
both ways. Either they're, like, definitely too tight, particularly with men, it's, like, way, way too tight, and they're physically uncomfortable, and I'm physically uncomfortable looking at them, or they're, like, drowning in their clothing because
Yeah.
they're hiding because they think they have quote unquote "dad bod" or a tummy, or they've
Mhm.
developed, more breast tissue in their pectoral area, and, like, they're freaking out
Mhm.
and whatever the case may be. So we all do this. All the humans across the spectrum, they all have thoughts about numbers. If you think like a tailor, then there's just measurements, and the whole game is how do I get this to fit better? And then you kind of put it on, and you should be able to forget about your clothing once you have that on.
Mm.
Like it shouldn't be
You
something we
already
play
made the
with and fidget
decision.
with. Yeah,
Yeah.
so good.
A
Yeah.
and then you were saying, like, have we already moved through? Because I remember you saying there were 3 steps.
Yeah, so the third step is what we call the creation phase. So just learning how to create outfits so that you can replicate the results. And typically,
Oh.
you have a formula that you're already wearing. Typically, and probably in the tech sector, we've got like a hoodie or some type of over piece. We have a
Mhm.
t-shirt, we have a pair of bottoms of some kind, and we have
Mhm.
comfortable shoes.
Yep.
So within that, that's 4 pieces. This is not a lot of stuff going on. I know some of y'all are dramatic. Oh, it's going to take forever. Really, the same 4 pieces. We
And
just
we're taking into account that we're all taking Judith's advice right now, and she has a fantastic term, by the way. She'll tell you to throw away your janky panties,
yes.
okay? Like, boys, please listen to this as well. Throw away your janky underwear. Get some that base layer. Let's have the underwear and socks be something that you feel good in and that is not stained, and you're not embarrassed if you have to take them off. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you should start paying attention to what you're already wearing, so by the time we go to purchase whatever's missing, it naturally fits in with what we've got. So we're not buying a bunch of crap. I'm not asking you to blow a budget and do anything crazy unless you absolutely need to. And I find the men most of the time we have to do serious wardrobe building, and there's more
Mm.
pieces required because we've had to throw away so many things. And that's
Because
okay.
we've let it slide for so long or never did it in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So by the time you get to that phase, it's like there's 4 pieces or there's 3 pieces. You don't even wear a sweater because you're hot all the time, whatever the case may be. And then we get to just up level those items, and it could just be one item at a time. Even just starting with like
Mm.
we've got the undies taken care of, just like a really great pair of jeans or a really great trouser. There's so much you can build off of that. If that's a main staple for you, you don't even need 5 pairs. We can go with 1 for now. And we can
Mhm.
start to create a wardrobe that makes sense for you, for your lifestyle and how you actually show up in the world. We don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with, and we don't have to go before your body's ready in terms of nervous system response, but there's a way to do this, and it's methodical. It's not like this crazy thing that has to happen. You just follow the steps, and you really can have a really nice, actually, transformation that feels very much like you at the end of it.
Do you ever find, because I've definitely caught myself doing this in the past, especially when I was younger, do you ever find that the humans that you work with have a little bit of work to do when they're going through figuring out what their style is, of switching the modality from what will other people's reaction of this be, and so I'll choose it? Because I want, it's almost like, and I just want, it could be my crazy performer brain, but it's like, how do I want the audience to react? And so I have chosen my clothes in the past to elicit that reaction, and maybe some undoing that needs to happen of like, how do I want to feel? And then I'm showing up like this, and then they get to react how they react. Like, is there a component of that that you notice when you're working with clients?
Oh, yes. We have to and this is just the human condition. We have to unwrite a lot of stories and a lot of rules we were handed. So, I mean, we have an ongoing special series on my podcast called Shit My Mama Said. And we have
Oh,
it for a
perfect.
reason because it's super cathartic experience for like
Yeah.
all the listeners who are like, "Oh my god, my mom too." And it's I mean, benign things like if you wear red lipstick, you look like a whore, or
Oh,
if
wow.
you,
Yeah.
don't wear jewelry when you leave the house, you're a streetwalker.
Oh my
We had a really
goodness.
funny one. And they're not funny, they're actually deeply painful to the person who experienced it,
Yeah.
but we've got it to a place where we can kind of laugh about it as a community and be like, okay, we get to rewrite all of these stories. We had, oh, that's what it was. Her grandmother told her she walked, her stride was too big and
Mm.
she had to shorten her stride. because mind you,
Mhm.
she's 6 feet tall. I'm not sure how she's supposed to shorten her stride. This doesn't like I have questions, but all of us get stories like this, right? Like men who want to be serious have to wear pinstripes. That's something I've heard, or their
Mm.
belt and their shoes have to match each other, just like women's handbags and shoes had to match each other.
Yes.
Like all of these rules that come into play, like, when is a white jacket appropriate for evening wear versus when, a black, black tie is truly black tie. Like when can we bend the rules? When is a bow tie appropriate versus a different type of tie? What kind of tie knot is like all the crazy, we get all mired in this insanity. And part of the work is as you go along the process and cleaning things up, you have to clean up the brain stuff too. Like,
Mhm.
why did I hold on to this stuff as long as I did? Why am I so afraid to wear clothing that fits me? Did somebody make a comment about my body way back when? You
Oh,
know
yeah. I mean, who didn't have a horrible middle school or high school moment where
Oh my
someone said
gosh.
something and we locked that story in? We locked it in because we were afraid of that, and then someone said it out loud, maybe in front of other people.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know someone who he couldn't put on weight when he was in middle school, which like
Mhm.
his growth spurt didn't happen until he was 22. So
Mm.
he was like under 6 feet tall all throughout high school. And then when he hit 22, he had this weird growth spurt. And not weird, I think that's actually normal for a lot of men. And he hit 6'3". And it like out of nowhere. So then suddenly he looked like a man, but it almost felt overnight and happened too late, quote unquote too late, right? So that's
Uh-huh.
still running around in his brain, and by the time he comes to work with me, he's like, "I'm not used to this body." It's like, it's not I don't know what's happening, and I can't put on weight, and I'm like, "No, dude, that's an old story. Have you actually looked at yourself lately?" Because the kid that had that issue when he was 14 or 15 or struggled with that or was teased mercilessly, and even that for my overweight peeps, if you had a lot of weight, whatever that
Mhm.
is, that's look at the human in front of you now because that person was 14 years old and picked on. We love them, but they're actually not here anymore, and you're
Oh,
okay.
yeah. Yep. And we can choose a different story now.
Yes, exactly.
Which is totally my jam. Yes. Figuring out what the story is first and identifying it, though, I imagine that that comes up a lot when you're working with people through their style, as you've said, that applies in lots of different areas of their lives. That's that style of how they move through the world, how they dress, how they plan for themselves, for the future, for all kinds of different things.
Yeah.
Um, I'm trying to think, what haven't we hit on that we should hit on for people right now? I feel like you've given us some really good structure for that 3-step process for being able to work through and start to think about, like, if you don't know where to start, Judith just gave us a great place for all of us to start. And I love that you have pointed out in several different ways for us today how the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves that might still be useful or might not be useful can be connected to something as specific as material that we wear in our body, that what's under them as far as our underwear and to our underwear and our socks.
Yep.
Like that, there's not a better analogy for like what can happen to us as well for what we think about ourselves on the inside versus what people see on the outside. Um, this is all really, really helpful stuff. And I know that even when I'm getting ready to talk to you, I'm like, oh, this is great because I get the opportunity to show up as that version of myself, because Judith is really, really amazing at, just by the way that she talks about it and showing up, that you want to do it too. You want to show up as a version of yourself that you like and that you're proud of. I think it's a wonderful business that you've created for other people to be able to unlock this in themselves.
Oh, it's so fun.
Where can people find out more about that? Like right now, I know that I've seen on Instagram, it's Modern Charm School, right?
Yeah, yeah. So my program's called Modern Charm School. So you just go to judithgaton.com, JUDITHGATON /Modern Charm School. And come hang out with us. We have a really good time. It's amazing in there. But I actually want to go back to a little bit of something you said that I think is actually really important. I think it's the best first segue. So if some of you are daunted by the idea of like throwing out all of your underwear because it's gotten that bad, and we love you, we see you, just start paying attention to yourself again. Like, really start to pay attention to yourself again. Spend just, like, 10 seconds longer in the mirror. spend just like 10 seconds longer when you're getting ready. Just like a little bit more time with yourself is a beautiful way to start this process, but it really takes you taking the time to stop and see yourself, to stop and like, how do I think? How am I feeling right now? Those little check-ins, that's where this is at. I mean, this is really about ultimately your relationship with yourself and therefore how you're going to
Yeah.
end up showing up in the world as a result of that relationship. And no huge overhaul is required. Like, I think it'd be fun if you decided to do that, but really just paying attention is where it's at.
This is fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing all this with us. I'm already thinking about some of the edits I want to make as far as like that sweater is in there because I have this story about this, but like I don't like wearing that sweater and it's itchy and it's too hot. So why is it in my closet?
All of us, like, even I go through the process once a quarter, and even I find stuff that I'm like, "Why did I keep this last quarter?" Like, I had a whole story around why it was so important that I keep this striped sweater that I actually fucking hate. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But all of us do this. All of us do this. I'm not exempt from that either. So it's a process, and you get to do it at regular intervals because that's part of the human life. We live in
That
seasons.
makes me feel a little bit better as well. Is that like when someone's at your level, like you still have things you catch yourself doing and you can bless and release.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
Well, Judith, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I know that for any of us that are thinking about upping our game a little bit, stepping into a version of ourselves that it's not just us and our Zoom jammies, like you said, spending some time to check in with ourselves, even if it's just a little bit more time in front of the mirror, or just when we are working without a camera on, Zoom's not happening. We're maybe not even going to go outside and see a lot of people today. But the way that we want to feel through the expression of clothing and style, personal style, is something that it's not too late for anyone, no matter what age you are, to do some work in this area and see if it makes you feel better.
Yep, I have multiple clients in their mid-70s. It is never too late, my friends.
It's never too late. That's a perfect way to end. Judith, thank you so much for spending time with us today. And thank
Thank
you for the work that
you.
you're doing in the world.
This was so fun, friend. Let's do this again.
Sounds good.